Hi, this is Scott Bradfield, and we are up in the 20s, 22, I think, episode of our Reading Books in the Bathtub. We're still on Ulysses. We're going to try to break through this sucker in the next few days because I'm getting a little sick of reading it. So as I warned you in the past couple of weeks, we're getting into the kind of prima donna passages for Joyce. And I have a very loose and inexpert theory about Joyce, which is that he was never really a novelist. He was he loved being. He was a very bright man. He had great intelligence. He loved being a celebrity, and as he was writing this book, he loved telling people about how great it was. I got to warn you: any writer who likes to talk about how great their books are before they finish them, I'm very suspect of those people. Joyce writes these wonderful passages. He's got this great intelligence. He has these characters who he clearly cares about. And then about halfway through the book, he just likes to come up with really clever ideas for chapters. And he's already talking to people. I think the guy's name was Stuart Gilbert and some of his friends and hangers-on, and telling them he was teaching people how to read his book as he wrote it. That's another terrible sign. So each of these chapters has a great, as I mentioned, a very challenging structure or framework to it, which as the book goes forward, they get longer and longer and more challenging, and until suddenly the framework is more important than the characters. We are in chapter 14, I believe. This is known as the Oxen of the Sun chapter. It starts on 499 in this edition, and the plot is pretty simple. I want to go through this chapter pretty quickly because I really find it an annoying chapter. The plot is, as these later chapters are starting to deliver, not that important. We don't get almost anything that we don't already have. Bloom decides to go see Mrs. Purefoy, who's been in labor for, I think, 3 days, in real pain at this hospital. And he goes in to give her his regards because he said to somebody he would do that during the day, if you recall. And while he's there, he goes in, he talks a bit, and then all those Stephen Dedalus and his friends all come in to, I guess, wish her well as well. I don't know why they're there really, but they're drunk, they're partying. They start to make a lot of jokes about women and having babies. Buck Mulligan comes along and has a theory that he's going to open up a special farm where he impregnates women from any class. Just so that, just because he wants to do it out of the goodness of his heart. And there's lots of these types of boy jokes in this long chapter. And really that's almost the extent of the chapter. Then they go off drinking. And I think that's almost everything of importance. Mrs. Purefoy delivers her child, a son, in the midst of this chapter. And then we never really hear from her again. Okay, so the structure of the chapter is a hugely ambitious series of pastiches. And in the framework of a baby gestating and coming into being, Joyce starts his chapter in like the beginnings, the roots of English literature. So I guess that you're getting back into medieval tales like Dream of the Road and all this really old stuff, Beowulf, and we have this really old kind of Old English and Middle English chapters in the beginning, and then he takes us every couple of paragraphs through a pastiche of a different writer. So I don't even want to really, frankly, read some of these. I can't identify most of the people that he's pastiching, but the most important thing is that each chapter is written, each paragraph is written in the language of that time. So we'll have a section on Chaucer, or we'll have one that sounds like Piers Plowman, a kind of allegory of all these different types. And Joyce will he will represent his characters through that language and that narrative idea. We go through, so there's Chaucer. Who did I know? It's Gawain and the Green Knight. There's one point where he refers to everyone as great knights, and he talks about them in kind of Arthurian legendary terms. And they're all waiting for Malachi, and they're waiting for. And when Buck Mulligan shows up, he does all his dirty jokes as usual. They make a lot of jokes about about women and women taking babies seriously and men just not really just doing it for fun. We've got Bunyan. There's a passage on 516 where the characters are embodying attributes like grace and bitterness and calmer and so forth. There's one on Bunyan, and there's another one that does seem a bit like Spencer, but I could not. I just read through this as well as I could. Don't like this chapter at all. There's a few moments in it that are slightly interesting, mainly that Bloom sees Stephen, and they mention for the umpteenth time that Bloom had never had a son, and he sees in Stephen a potential son. And we've done that before. So we have the jokes, 526, about Buck Mulligan's going to set up shop and impregnate everybody. And the chapter, again, all these chapters are too long. It's 70 or 80 pages of guys sitting around. Pepys, Samuel Pepys, there's a section that sounds like Samuel Pepys. There's one that's a takeoff on Gothic literature. So out of nowhere, 539, we just basically get this chapter that's kind of a Melmoth the Wanderer type language, or Anne Radcliffe Gothic, and everyone's flesh is creeping, and everything is told in this heightened, horrific, emotional language, and it's very clever. There's a moment in 543 when someone makes a joke to Stephen about how you don't want to upset your mother, not remembering that Stephen's mother's dead, and Stephen feels upset. All the stuff we've done before. We know Stephen's upset about his mother. And let's get through this. There's a section that seems to me like Darwin. Again, what most people do when they read this Oxen of the Sun chapter, and I did this many times when I read Ulysses in the past, or several times, is you can't read it by itself. You have to kind of have this little concordance next to you, which tells you what the style is that you're reading in each paragraph, and then will actually help you puzzle out what's happening, because it's a lot of the language changes with the periods. So we go from this medieval period all the way up through Joyce's contemporaries. There's a passage that sounds a lot like Dickens. Again, the chapter. Okay, it just goes on and on. And the last few pages I find even most exasperating, which is just all the boys get together, they're really drunk, and they go out to a bar, and they start drinking some more, and then at the end of the chapter, they go off towards the red light district. They're looking for a whorehouse, and they're off getting drunk. So that's really the end of it. The next chapter is a lot more fun. It's too long as well, but it's a lot more fun than this one, and it's a little easier to follow. But if you read through that chapter and you found it annoying, you understand how I feel. I made that as quick as possible. I don't think there's almost nothing of importance in that chapter, except that Joyce is very clearly a bright man, and he can emulate all sorts of historical writers. Okay, next time we'll do the long chapter where they're all drunk, and it's a hallucinatory, sometimes very funny chapter, and that's quite a long chapter, but it should go by a little faster, and you're going to basically be in reality as it's imagined by Bloom and these various characters who are extremely drunk. Okay, all right. I hope I did that as quickly as possible. Bye.